a really interesting piece of research that's been undertaken by some fellow foundations in the Australian context, looking at how grant makers feel about paying the indirect costs of projects and initiatives for not-for-profits. And it's certainly true to say that some funders struggle to be comfortable with the idea of contributing to indirect costs of an organisation rather than strictly to project costs. So the Pay What It Takes report surveys that landscape and makes a lot of recommendations, and Philanthropy Australia is doing a lot of work to socialise that report and to help organisations, funders, become more comfortable with the idea that they need to be supporting the organisation, not just the project. So as we know, you need a healthy organisation to be able to do its work properly, and that's moving along on that spectrum. So, as would be the case in Canada, our philanthropic landscape has a vast diversity of grant makers, old and new, small and large, who all have a diversity of levels of comfort of where they are, where they're comfortable about funding very small initiatives, single year, multi-year, indirect costs, general operating support. So Pay What It Takes is part of the landscape and the spectrum of moving people towards funding organisations for a healthy not-for-profit ecosystem.
Yeah, and we're hopeful that the research and the way in which it is embraced will see a further shift in the culture of the way in which giving, untied giving, characterises philanthropy in this country. I'm a member of a group of CEOs of peer foundations, and we at a dinner last week, we're talking about this Pay What It Takes research. And these are relatively large foundations that I'm speaking about. And they're not all there yet, but my sense is that there is a steady move towards the acceptance of what I think is the immutable truth that we don't know as much about what a grantee needs as it does. And if we have confidence in it, it is mission and values aligned. Why would we get in the way? Why would we manifest hubris by even suggesting that the funds that we are in a position to grant, or at least recommend to be granted, ought to be applied other than that organisation thinks optimal? And as soon as one articulates that thought, it seems to dispose, for me at least, intellectually, to dispose of the debate, subject to, as I said, those matters, and of course, trust. Can we trust a grantee? And if we can't trust the grantee, we shouldn't be funding the organisation.
2020, when everything stopped in Australia in March, everything went online and things stopped.
Same here.
I was in meetings of foundations and funders where people would talk about the flexibility that they were showing around granting contracts, and we've allowed time, an extension, or we've allowed people to reallocate funds around those grant contracts. And I was able to say, well, we haven't had to do that because with, as you call it, core mission funding, general operating support, an organisation has the flexibility to put the funds where they needed it at that time. And COVID, 2020 in particular, was the ultimate sort of example of when organisations had to change the way they were doing things. They simply couldn't undertake some of the projects that they were working on, and they had to refocus on delivering their core service in a different way. So that was, for me, we weren't expecting that when we went to general operating support, but it was a really wonderful example of the benefit of it.